Hi, I'm Scott. I call myself the world's oldest vlogger. Today, I'm not going to talk about some of the places I've been and some of the things I've done. I'm going to talk about a little dash cam that I have installed here just behind my mirror on my car. It's called the Rove R2-4K dash cam. Right under here it says, "Truth be told." Well, the truth is, it's not truly 4K. Yes, it has the right number of horizontal lines at 2,160, but it does not have the right number of vertical lines of 3,880. It only has 2,880, but it's a more square format, so your resolution is still very high. I'm a former professional photographer. Now I do it just for fun. So my interest photographically or camera wise is going to be probably different than yours. You're probably just looking for something to stick up there to see where you're going, to see if there's an accident, you want that recorded. If there's something interesting, you may want that recorded. And by the way, that accident could happen to you or it could happen to somebody else. You're just a witness. Maybe some damage gets done to your car or you get an undeserved citation. This is going to give you the data and information to help you out. So that's probably why you're looking for it. But I'm going to go through it a little bit more photographically. Now, everything I talk about here is my opinion. I'm not going to go through all the settings and options, and there are plenty of them, but you can read that on the data and other places. My purpose is to kind of keep this short and primarily show and compare video quality with the different resolutions that it has available, and simple, maybe a little bit of audio quality too. Obviously, your experience may differ. Now, let me just tell you right up front, we're talking about resolution, but remember that resolution doesn't matter too much if you don't have a decent lens. And how decent a lens are you going to get with a $100 camera? This is just a little bit over $100. At least that's what I paid for it. But, you know, so you can't expect the kind of quality that you would get with a high-end camera with a really sharp, clear glass lens. If you're expecting to read a license plate more than about, say, 30 feet from in front of your car, you're probably going to be a little bit disappointed. But you'd need to spend anywhere from $50 to $150 more to get something that's going to give you a little bit better quality lens. All said, for about $100 dash cam, as I said, the Rove R2-4K is a fine little camera, and I intend to keep it and use it. So let's compare the results from different video resolutions and frames per second. And then I'm going to do a second video in which I will add a polarizer filter to it. Now, Rove does not make a polarizer filter. You have to get something from somewhere else, and I'll show you how I did that in my second video. The videos that you see here will not be done with a polarizer filter on it. So let's start out with the highest resolution that it has available, which is the 2,880 by 2,160 lines of resolution. At that resolution, you only have one choice on the frames per second, and that choice is 24 frames per second. Now, that's pretty typical for a movie. If you're watching a movie, watching something on a DVD or streaming video, you're going to see it normally at about 24 frames per second. In this case, because of the speed of the shutter speed, you might get a little bit of jittery or a little bit of yeah, I don't know any other word to use for it, but you might see a little bit of jittery. But the resolution is pretty good. Maybe we can stop here and look at some try to read some license plates and things like that, or even driving along, try to read some license plates and see what we get. Now that's your only choice on the 2880 by 2160 is 24 frames per second. The next resolution down isn't down very far. It's still 2560 by 1440. So resolution is still higher than what you'd watch on, say, a Blu-ray DVD. So it's not bad at all. And on this one, you get 30 frames per second. That will smooth it out just a little teeny bit. Let's take a look at some 2560 by 1440 and see what you get on the resolution, on the clarity and the sharpness with that one. Maybe stop time and see if you can read license plates if you need to, if somebody's doing some violation or whatever. Okay, the next resolution down is 2304 by 1296. Now we're still above what's called full HD or FHD, so still pretty good resolution. This one is also available only at 30 frames per second, like the 2560 by 1440. The 2304 by 1296 is only available in the 30 frames per second. So let's take a look at that, see what you think of that resolution. Now we get down to what's called, well, I say down, it's 15 years ago or 20 years ago, this was way up, and it was what's called full HD or FHD, you'll see it. 1920 by 1080 is what you get on a Blu-ray disc. It's available in both 60 frames per second and 30 frames per second. The advantage of 60 frames per second is you might be smoothing it out even a little bit more, and you do have the opportunity for a little bit of slow motion. If you needed to slow something down to get some details, you could do it better in the 60 frames per second. So let's take a look and see what it looks like to view the video. Resolution is not as good as it is at the higher resolutions, obviously, but you can still read pretty good. You can still see things pretty well, see some details in signs and license plate numbers and things like that. Now in 30 frames per second, you don't lose any resolution. You still have the same resolution, and it still looks pretty darn smooth. But if you did decide you wanted to slow it down a little bit, you would get a real choppy, jittery look if you tried to slow it down. But so what? If you're looking for details and you need to slow it down to get those details, you've got them. That's not a bad thing. The only good reason to shoot at a lower resolution and a lower FPS or frames per second is to get more space on your SD card, but you do take a quality hit. Now there is one more that might be interesting to you, and that is 1280 by 720. Now 1280 by 720 is actually what used to be called high definition before the full HD came along. It was the first version of the high definition. In this camera, it's not a very good resolution. However, you can go up to 120 frames per second. So that gives you a real good opportunity for some real slow motion if you wanted to record and you feel like you'd really like to be able to get good slow motion. Then that's the way to do it, is at that 1280 by 720 if you're willing to give up the resolution to get that 120 frames per second or slow motion. Here's some samples of that. Now, my recommendation is always to use the highest resolution for frames per second desired. Okay, so with a little bit of choppiness, if you're okay with a little bit of choppiness at the 24 frames per second, then use the 4K. If you like the smoothness of the 30 frames per second a little bit better, then go to the 2560 by 1440. And then if you want really smooth, you can go down to the 1920 by 1080 and get it at 60 frames per second. Or if you really need that slow motion, then you can go down to that 720 horizontal lines of resolution and get the 1/5 speed playback. Now, stuff does happen at night also, so let's take a look at some nighttime video. The opportunity to see what it looks like where there is a little bit of artificial light from the street lights and business signs and lighting as we go through this community. And then into an area where there's very little light, relying almost exclusively on the light provided by your own headlights. Well, this wraps up my thoughts on the Rove R2-4K Dashcam. Incidentally, I did reach out to the seller a couple times on easy questions, and I got prompt responses, which I think that's really a good thing. So if you're looking for something to record your comings and goings in pretty decent quality, without rear facing, etc., those other bells and whistles, then this could be the right choice for you. And sometimes rear facing is not bells and whistles. Sometimes it's necessary. I will be creating a video on this camera with a polarizer filter very soon, so watch for that. And until then, this is Scott Law, the world's oldest vlogger, asking you to keep on keeping on.